Take it away, Tim.
All right, thanks, Kelly. Appreciate you. I'll get done kind of quickly here so that we're not going too long. But this is the program that we've developed here at the Milwaukee office. I'm not going to claim to be the inventor of any of this. This is just what we've gone through and what's been extremely successful from us to have a program that's gone from essentially what it was non-existent to a baseline, invaluable service that we're providing to decision makers. And this is something that it doesn't really depend on what CWA size you have or how many people you got there, because everywhere you go, you're going to have school districts and kids on these school buses that don't have seat belts. And if you have any sort of winter weather conditions in your area, that's going to be a concern for the school district superintendents and decision makers who have to keep people safe. All right, so where this began, when I started in this role in 2015, the first winter we had just kind of soaked in how we were doing things here, and we didn't have any direct communication with school district superintendents or the decision makers. The expectation was that the county emergency management directors were the weather liaisons to any of the other local decision makers. So you'd send out our information, and that would get out to the school districts, whoever else they have, to try to keep people safe in their county. So at that time as well, the schools were kind of a gray area partner for the decision support services, because it's maybe not as governmental as some of these other institutions that we've worked with for years. But I think it's very hard to argue against the public safety of kids and staff and parents, and just the impact that it has to commerce whenever schools do shut down. So how it started for us, I got an email from Heather Kramer, who's the Hustisford superintendent, which she also happened to be the cousin of the Dodge County emergency management director. And her district is a rural district about 50 to 55 miles away from both the Milwaukee and Madison TV markets. And at the time, she was using a slew of decision-making tools. So the main one was that they were using television meteorologists and the TV stations to get a gauge on what's going to happen weather-wise. So they were listening in on the Milwaukee market. Even just having one market, you could get 3 or 4 different forecasts depending on the TV meteorologist that you're listening to. But with this district, you're also tapping into the Madison area as well, and other potential families living west of Hustisford that would be bussed into that area. So they're really getting confused, and making a decision as important as canceling or delaying school was difficult when you're seeing 4 or 5 different forecasts. And with that as well, they weren't really talking about her area. It was typically either just specifically Milwaukee or Madison, where they'd be talking about what's going to be happening with the winter storm. So it was very difficult to make these decisions. So then after that, consulted with the county emergency management directors, Amy Nails and Joe Maher from Dodge County, where I checked in with them to kind of see what their thoughts were. And she essentially, when you get to know somebody, they lay it out there pretty succinctly for you. But Amy was pretty upfront with saying, like, you're crazy if you think emergency management directors are going to wake up at 3 in the morning to take your email and make sure it gets out to the school district people. They have a number of things that they're involved with during the day that, waking up that early is not going to happen. So they were aware that those decisions were being made well before they were waking up. But, you can imagine being on the receiving end of one of these school district superintendents. Emergency management director gets into the office 8:30, sees your email and forwards it out to all their contacts in their county. By 8:30, as a school district superintendent, you've already made your decision, and you can imagine seeing something that would be contradictory to whatever you were using to make that decision from the TV meteorologists or whatever resource you had online. So that part of it was pretty eye-opening, that there was this view that emergency management directors are these weather monitoring liaisons to get information out, and they help us get the word out to their constituents. But at the same time, when there's very specific decisions that are made, we might not be hitting the time frame if we're just directly going to the EMs and hoping that they're going to get that information in a timely manner to those decision makers. So they wanted a consistent message to get those schools to make a good decision. So what we did is an opt-in service. We didn't force this down the throats of everybody, but in our 20 county CWA that we have 206 school districts. So that might seem like a lot to have to work through, but just even one school district, think of the impact that that has, the number of kids and staff and family members, that even just getting that one contact that you're working with and the trickle down that that has to helping keep those kids safe. So in Wisconsin, there's an online website called, it's called CISA. It's the regions of the school districts. And you can get all the information for all the school districts online. So I just downloaded all that and emailed every single school district superintendent listed on there individually and said, here we are, we're going to do this new service. Are you interested? And if so, just give me your contact information. So we did a bunch of outreach up front to kind of say what we're going to do and ask questions. The main thing one of the things we got back was that the school district superintendents were like, well, how much does this cost? Because obviously at the time, a lot of people don't know who the Weather Service is. They might relate us to like the Weather Channel and it being a costly service. So trying to just break down that idea that we cost something. So making people aware, and with time for us, it's been word of mouth as well, that word has gotten out. The Weather Service is doing this. They're part of the government. It's free. Your taxes pay for it. You can help it out. So we did have some initial staff concern that if we're working with 206 school districts, what if every school district starts calling us with questions and comments and all that stuff? And that was valid, but what we've seen is basically no calls or hardly any calls at all. If anything, it's been to potentially jump on like a small group of school district superintendents. Like sometimes in southern Milwaukee County, all those school districts will group together and make a decision, and they just want us on there to give us maybe some specific details for that. But if you're putting out good information in your emails and these webinars, that helps make their decision for them, where they don't have to ask those extra questions. So making sure that you're putting out that good content is really important. So initially, these green districts here are the initial ones that we had signed that opted in that first winter season. So we did survey them initially, and we did a follow-up survey a number of years later, and a lot of these statistics stayed the same. There were three main decision points that we found for when these school district superintendents needed to make the call for whether or not to cancel school. The first one was the evening before the event. So there's a slew of school district superintendents who, no matter the situation, even if it's a low confidence type weather event for us, they wanted to make that call the evening before the event so that parents could set up daycare and just rather play it on the safe side, because they didn't want to wait till the next morning to make that call. But typically that decision is made by 7 or 8 p.m. so that they could get that information out onto the evening news as well. You can see there's some 8 to 9, 9 to 10s, but in Milwaukee and in Madison, we also have news that starts at 9 o'clock. So they want to get that information, that decision made earlier if they can. So if we do have to do something, if there's an update, we try to get an email out by 7 o'clock. The most decision making, it happens the early morning of an event. So between 4 and 5 a.m. and then there's this 5 to 6 a.m. But I think most of that is at 5 a.m. because a lot of the school buses start heading out shortly after that. So you can see almost everything is done. Some people are making that decision between 3 and 4 a.m. in the morning. So we make a pretty good effort to get that email out by 3 a.m. because if you don't get that information out in front of people before they make a decision, then it's worthless. You need to get that information out regardless so that they can make that decision in a timely manner. And then it gets a little bit more messy. There is a late morning where if a school tries to hold at least morning and early afternoon school, there's some that like to cancel early. There's a lot that don't because they don't want to send kids home without a parent there. But this is more so for the afternoon and evening activities, where if they have to make that call, it's typically sometime around like 10 to noon that call has to be made. So the issue there is if they make a late cancellation on a sporting event or something that's happening after hours, then the buses leave, the kids stuck at school, and the parents can't get there to help them out. So that if you have an update early in the morning and then an update late morning just on trends, timing, all that, that helps them with that decision making as well. We've heard a little bit that there could be some more virtual days for some school districts where they just have a virtual day instead, which might bump up that decision making to just being a little bit more lenient in the day before. But a lot of the rural districts said they have issues with internet connectivity for virtual learning, so they're sticking with the good old snow days, so the kids still do have hope there. So what causes these cancellations? Most typically it's winter storm warnings, schools canceled. The school districts, if they can say like the National Weather Service has issued a winter storm warning, it makes it very hard for the parents to be upset with the school district superintendent making that decision. A lot of it goes back onto them, and that's kind of what they use. They also have a lower threshold for just any general snow-covered or icy roads because they have a lot of travel for sports and STEM activities later in the evening. And just knowing about slippery conditions can really be an issue for them, and they might have to cancel or adjust for that. So kind of a lower threshold there. The extreme cold is bad too. They don't want school buses breaking down and having kids sitting outside for an extended period of time. So wind chill warning is most school districts' threshold, and they want to know when that's going to pop out of that threshold. So if it warms up by 9, 10 o'clock, maybe they just have a late start. If it's going to last through the early afternoon, then they just cancel all day. Dense fog also is an issue too. There's been a number of crashes around here involving school buses and some kids getting killed from those incidents. So dense fog is also a concern there, and some of them might do a 2-hour delay for that. It's also important to know that there's non-meteorological factors at play in whether or not schools get canceled or delayed. Some of that can be with like families that are living below the poverty line and whether or not they're going to get a meal that day, so they might stay open just because of that. So it's important not to become a decision maker for these schools by saying like schools need to be canceled tomorrow. Give them the information, be the support, and not the maker for them. So the email, we have a winter ops group. It's classified. We've got 3 different partner groups that are kind of the same threshold: airport operations, DOT, highways, and schools that all need to know this kind of basically any kind of accumulating snow that's at sub-advisory levels. The EMs want to get more of this is going to be a big one. It's going to shut everything down. It's going to be very, very impactful. So we have 2 levels. It's this winter ops group and then all partners email when we have like the big winter storms. And the timing is really important. So the email on the days where it's going to be a snow day or potential cancellation, our office is going to be collaborating early, and we're not going to go through and do all the sky grids first. We want to be able to work on that storm, get the graphics going, and work on our messaging as early as we possibly can so that we're very timely with getting that email out on time. Late morning, a lot of times that'll just be a straight email with no graphics in it. Afternoon email, we try to get that out early as well for those decisions going on into the evening hours. And that early evening update is pretty similar as well. Here's just a quick snapshot of our email. We do include the bus company reps on this because they help with the decision making. There's other safety people with the school, with ops, grounds, and the athletic directors, which help out with that decision and being safe. Bottom line up front, if you could write what's going to happen, 1 or 2 sentences, what would you put? And then the what has changed. These 2 sections have been hugely popular, which are also in our sit reps as well. But a lot of people will just read that to get an idea of what's happening there. We also don't put any unlisted Weather Service phone numbers or contact info in our emails as well because they like to forward these on and they don't want something unlisted getting passed along to other people who are in the public. So we do a 3:45 a.m. webinar, which is for warning situations and even some borderline high-end advisory events in case it gets out of control or a little bit higher. And Monday through Friday for these when the school is going on, and typically by 5 a.m. they've got to start making their notifications to all the media and parents. So they don't have a whole lot of time from when they get information to making that call. They also have to check around with snow plows and how road conditions are as well. We do put the PDF together ahead of time and send that out, and then also record the go-to as a private video on YouTube and share that about 30 minutes after that. So with that, I'll just end with this slide here. This was feedback we received from our partners after we had a pretty big bust on the January 2020 near blizzard. We had been forecasting a pretty high impact winter storm to come through, and it missed us pretty significantly to the east. But while we're getting beat up on social media from the public, our school district superintendents were all having our back and just supporting us with what we were doing and helping them out. So those are a few comments there. And as of today, we've got 187 out of 206 districts signed up for the program. And with that, that's all I got.
That's awesome, Tim.